OTAs going on this week, and it's nice to talk about stuff that's going on the field as opposed to all the nonsense that's going on off the field. But let's start with that first overall pick this year in the NFL draft, one that kind of had my head scratched a little bit when they made the pick and went with Phillip Dorsett. How has he looked so far in OTAs this week?
Yeah, I've been very pleased with what I've seen, not only starting back in really the rookie mini camp 2 weeks ago, and then now that he's out there with the veterans, everyone knows his speed, and I think that's the thing that's most evident, and he has caught several deep balls here early on. But it's the completeness that he has shown. This is a guy that's caught the ball over the middle a couple times, made some nice grabs, really extending his body. I think he's a little bigger than T.Y. Hilton, and I think those two are going to be compared, throughout their tenure here in Indianapolis. And I think if you look at the differences, Phil Dorsett's maybe a little bigger than T.Y. Hilton, which I think allows him maybe early on in his career to be that guy that can go over the middle. I think that was one of the, knock isn't the right word, but it took T.Y. a little bit of time to become that true number one receiver. And I think why Dorsett was picked where he was picked, because the Colts feel that he has more of a complete package besides just that 4.2 40 speed. So right now he was working with the second team for a lot of the OTA period earlier this week. He definitely got some first-team action as well. But I think the biggest thing is just continue for him to get some reps, move them all over that offense because, as you guys know, you have a multitude of pass catchers. You have guys that really complement each other from a skill set standpoint. So it was pretty much Andre Johnson, T.Y. Hilton, Dante Moncrief working with that first team. But Phil Dorsett definitely got some reps, and I only expect that to grow as the OTA period continues over the next couple of weeks.
Well, you mentioned that speed, and that was one of the things that was brought up in the forefront with why the Colts decided that he was the guy for them there in the first round. To watch that speed, and I know game speed and practice speed may be two different things, but can you even put into words how fast this guy is?
I mean, he just looks so fluid out there. I mean, he makes it look easy, but then you are able to see him, okay, he's running stride for stride with a defensive back, and then 10 yards later he's created a couple of yard separation. And when you look back at that New England game and you think, obviously the run defense is still priority number one, but when you look at the offensive side of the ball in that game, there were 12 targets to wideouts during that game. 12 passes thrown in receivers' directions, and only 2 were caught. T.Y. Hilton had one catch, Akeem Nicks had the other. So when we talk about playing in these bigger games and when you have defenses that do a great job of taking away T.Y. Hilton, you have to be able to win those matchups where it's going to be a Phil Dorsett against New England's third or fourth corner or Pittsburgh's third or fourth corner. So I think that's where he's going to come into play, is he really allows you to do a lot of different things offensively. And we haven't seen the Colts be that innovative in, gadget-type plays over the past couple of years. Putting Dorsett on the field, it wouldn't shock me at all if you can get him the ball in reverse situations, maybe some quicker bubble screens. You just let him get the ball and show off that 4.2 40 speed.
With Reggie Wayne gone now, the wide receiver core of Indy, as deep as it is, it gets young really quick. Andre Johnson, have you noticed already, or too early to tell, or is it obvious that's your veteran leader coming into this team on that receiving core?
I think it's pretty obvious, when you go out to practice and you see the guys that don't partake in special teams drills, it's all those veterans. Reggie Wayne obviously didn't play special teams during his tenure, and Andre Johnson is the guy that won't be playing special teams either. So he's the lone wideout, him and T.Y. Hilton, and T.Y. still feels some punts here on occasion. That he's off to his side working on his craft, and he's not a talker. I mean, Reggie wasn't a major talker, but Reggie definitely was more of a talker than Andre Johnson. The thing that I'm most impressed by him on the field is just that physical presence. The Colts have never had, in the last really 10 to 15 years, have never had a receiver of Andre Johnson's stature, a guy 6'3", 220 that, yes, he turns 34, I believe, later this year, but that body hasn't gone away. That frame hasn't gone away. And you just see his catch radius along with Dante Moncrief, and that's so much different than a T.Y. Hilton or a Phillip Dorsett. I think that's where his greatest asset is going to come into, is can he win those one-on-one battles, not from a speed standpoint and not from a separation standpoint, but just being a bigger-bodied receiver to really help complement that wideout room. And then at the same time, he does bring, like you said, just ample NFL experience to that room. And I think in a way that could help that room. T.Y. Hilton was a sponge to Reggie Wayne and soaked up all that. Well, now here's Andre Johnson. Here's 7 Pro Bowls. Here's the Houston Texans' greatest player in franchise history until J.J. Watt came around. now what can Andre Johnson, what can his presence do for that room and helping T.Y. Hilton, Dante Moncrief, further progress in their NFL careers.
Kevin Bowen from Colts.com joining us on the Menard Studio Hotline. It's Ford and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 1053 and online, ESPNEvansville.com. And I saw a picture on the website earlier today of Andre Johnson wearing his Colts uniform, the helmet, pads, jersey, the whole 9 yards. It was great to see, but it was weird to see because, like you said, he's been so associated with the Houston Texans for so long. To see him in Colts blue again, it was great to see, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does when the season gets underway. But it's just a little different. Don't get me wrong; it won't take long to get used to. I'm ready to see it. But another guy, obviously, the other big veteran signing in the offseason was being able to bring in Frank Gore. How is he? Is he the Andre Johnson veteran presence for that running back group?
Yeah, and I think the thing about OTAs is it's pretty much a glorified passing situation. This is 7-on-7, 11-on-11. Guys are in helmets and shorts. So you won't really know what Frank Gore is going to mean on the field from a ground and pound type of standpoint until you get up to training camp and you get in the preseason. Right now it's more of trying to see what you have on the pass offense, try to see what you have on the pass defense. But as far as Gore, yes, similar to Johnson, he's a very quiet guy, but he definitely leads by example. I think Boom Herron and Vic Ballard have both talked about, his resume speaks for itself. I think last year Gore had, I want to say right around 250 carries and 1,100 yards. And that was not a down year for him, but based off his other years, that was, kind of an average year for him. The last time the Colts have had a running back achieve a 250 carry or an 11-yard season is like a decade ago. So if he just comes in here and has an average season on Frank Gore's standard, it's going to be the best season the Colts running back has had in over 10 years. I think one thing that he has mentioned that he's really excited about is seeing all these pass catchers. He wants to run against 6- and 7-man boxes. And I think we talk all about these pass catchers and how this offense could be, one of the best in the NFL. It's going to really benefit Frank Gore. Having those guys and be able to spread you out 3 and 4 wide, and again, being able to run against those favorable matchups when opposing defenses come out in a nickel set, and yet you can still run Frank Gore and feel like he can be productive out of the backfield. So I think that's something that definitely to keep an eye on is all these pass catchers is going to allow him to open things up for him in the running game. Andrew Luck touched on what you forget and you don't realize until you get him in the room is just how knowledgeable he is from a blocking standpoint. Again, they aren't doing, blocking drills per se right now, but there are blitzers coming in and Frank Gore is communicating in that backfield of I've got this guy, I've got that guy. And Andrew Luck said he's been very impressed by Frank Gore kind of touching on, okay, watch for this blitzer, watch for that blitzer. And again, that comes from a decade of experience in the NFL. So I think when you hit that free agent market, you couldn't have asked for a better combination of guys still producing at this age and then hungry veterans that, again, want to get back to the Super Bowl, and for Andre Johnson want to get to that Super Bowl.
Kevin Bowen, featured writer for Colts.com, joining us, our guest today on Ford and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 1053. And speaking of that running back group, Kevin, I know you've had a chance to talk to him, but there's a really great story out of that running back squad, and that is the story of Josh Robinson. Explain for people that maybe aren't familiar with Josh's story exactly where he has come from to get to the NFL.
Yeah, terrific story. And again, he's one of those feel-good stories that I think fans are really going to gravitate towards. They're going to love his running style first and foremost because he's a bowling ball that can break tackles. I encourage everyone to YouTube Josh Robinson Kentucky run last year. He broke about 8 tackles on one play. But you mentioned his story. He grew up in Louisiana, I believe in 2004. His grandfather died. He was raised by his grandparents. A year later, on the same day, I think it was like a May 23rd, 23 is a common denominator in all these numbers. His grandmother passed away. His mother was then put in jail, I believe 18-year sentence a few years later on February 23rd, and he got his first 100-yard game on the 23rd of November. So that's why 23 means so significant to him. I believe he has 23 tattooed on him. He lived in his car for several months during high school, and this is a guy that has been through a ton in his life. He doesn't really put himself out there. He didn't really let his high school coaches know that he had to go through all these circumstances. He was an early enrollee down at Mississippi State, and in talking to Mississippi State head coach Dan Mullen, they said the biggest thing was they wanted to get Josh Robinson in their family. When his mom went to jail, that was early on in his high school senior year, I want to say. And so they wanted to get him into their family and have that Mississippi State environment around him and just, pretty much open his eyes to a whole new world. And that's exactly what I think Mississippi State did for Josh. When he was there, Vic Ballard was the returning senior starter in that backfield. And talking to Vic earlier in the week, and Josh gives a ton of credit to what Vic has meant to him. Josh redshirted in that 2011 season. Vic was the leading rusher for the Bulldogs. But Vic said he remembers seeing Josh as kind of as this pudgy little freshman that was a pretty good runner, though. And Vic knew that guy can come in here and take some of my carries. And so Vic said that the Colts coaches asked about him during the draft process. And credit to Vic, because him and Josh are going to be not only competing for carries down the road, but they could be competing for a roster spot. And so Josh just had he really kind of, he's a light bulb. The rookies went down to the track a couple weeks ago to visit the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and this is a guy that was asking 1,000 questions to all the tour guys and that stuff. He's been through so much in his life. I think he's going to be one of the feel-good stories. And like I said earlier, this is a guy that can definitely play. I mean, he rushed, I believe, for over 1,100 yards in the SEC last year, 6.2 yards a carry, and it really helped Mississippi State get to that number 1 ranking.
Kevin Bowen, Colts.com, our guest on the Menards Studio Hotline. It's a great story, and I hope to see him in a Colts uniform and watch him contribute this season. Another story off the field this week coming out of the owners' meetings is the changes to the point after. I imagine that you've had the chance to talk to Adam Vinatieri about that. What was his thoughts?
Well, in typical Adam fashion, he gave the great PR answer, but his body language told it all. He said, I'm a traditionalist. I didn't see a need to change it. And the biggest thing that Adam says about it is just because kickers have gotten so good that not only is the extra point automatic, but, really any field goal inside of 40 yards you feel is pretty automatic. Just because they've gotten so good, why should they be punished? Should wideouts have to not wear gloves anymore because they've gotten so good? Yeah, I think that it was kind of his biggest gripe about the situation. In terms of the two-point conversion, though, and how the Colts, that might impact the Colts, I'd be very surprised if they go for more two-point conversion. When you look at a 33-yard extra point from the dead middle of the field, Adam Vinatieri is going to make that 95% of the time. Now, when you get into elements and you get into, a trip to Pittsburgh in early December on Sunday Night Football, or, if you got to go to Foxborough again or go to Denver during the playoff, I think that's where it could come into play, where teams might be more inclined to go for two. But from a Colts standpoint, and Chuck Pagano said this earlier this week, I would be very surprised if they did go for two more than just trotting Adam Vinatieri out there, have him kick that 33-yard extra point, keep that momentum. So, again, I'd be shocked if the Colts leaned more towards that two-point conversion here in 2015.
One more for you real quick. What's the status of Robert Mathis? How's he look so far in OTAs?
The only update on him is he won't participate in OTAs. Him and Gosner Chairless are all rehabbing while everybody else is going through OTAs. I know Mathis has said he wants to be ready at some point for training camp, whereas Jim Irsay, dating back to the owners' meetings in March, said worst case scenario, he might not be 100% until November. So I don't think we're going to get any answer on Mathis until November, until training camp. There were a couple guys that were banged up out there at the outside linebacker spot earlier this week. Bjorn Werner didn't participate in team drills, and neither did Eric Walden. So you had Trent Cole and Jonathan Newsom getting a lot of reps out there. I think if there is good news out of that outside linebacker spot is you do have some guys that have proven themselves, and it is, I think, one of the deeper positions on the team. So if Mathis is lost for any period of time during the regular season, the Colts brought in Trent Cole, Jonathan Newsom emerged late in the season last year. I think those guys are more than capable of holding it down and then try to, rev up Mathis and get him 200% at some point in 2015.
Kevin Bowen, featured writer for Colts.com. As always, great stuff, Kevin. Appreciate the time and enjoy the holiday weekend.
Thanks, guys. You too.